Student, Master, you were just stating that meditation is practically making the mind blank. But there is another type of meditation that, as a contrary, is very dynamic, which is concentrating and thinking on a topic, indicating a mental dynamics. That is, are there two types of meditation? Samael Aun Weor. There are many types of meditation, yet, if we want to apprehend the reality, if we want to experience the truth, if we want to feel in our psyche that element which transforms us radically, we need then the stillness and silence of the mind. This is not about making the mind blank, because indeed that is absurd. What is required is to attain the stillness and silence of the mind, and that is different. Making the mind blank is in the depths, and excuse the word, even stupid. It takes more than that stupidity. Stillness and silence of the mind is needed. When the thinking process has been exhausted, the mind becomes still and in silence. And then the new arrives. This is not a matter of fighting the thoughts that come, so that the mind becomes still. No. The means is to contemplate those thoughts, to comprehend them, to intelligently contemplate those desires, to contemplate and understand all the memories that come to mind. When one is comprehending all that comes to mind, then one cannot say a word. For instance, let us say that the memory of a scene of anger at home comes to mind. What will we do? Try to comprehend it. And after comprehending it, what? Forget it. Then another memory arises. Maybe a conversation with our godmother or godfather or our neighbor. What to do? Reject it? Absurd. Then what? Meditate and comprehend. Once it is comprehended, forget it. Then it may happen that the memory of a football game arises. What to do? Reject it? No, do not reject it. What to do? I repeat, comprehend the futility of that, the vanity of that. Once it is fully comprehended, forget it. And so on with all that parade of thoughts, desires, feelings, memories, etc. They all have a beginning and an end. Thus, when that film of memories, desires, thoughts, emotions, etc. is over, the mind then is still and quiet. Then the new arrives. And if it does not come, if nothing happens despite the fact of sensing that the mind is still and silent, then what happens? Simply, we have not yet reached absolute stillness in all the levels of the mind. Then we have no other choice but to descend into deeper levels. What I mean is this. When quietude arrives at the purely intellectual level, we then must proceed to stillness at the second level. We must rebuke the mind and ask it why it does not silence. The mind will respond with absurd thoughts, with sophistry. We must try to make the mind comprehend the futility or vanity of what it feels. Once this is achieved, we proceed to a third level, to comprehend on that third level the necessity of being quiet, and so on and so forth, from level to level, until reaching the 49th. If we succeed, if we achieve each of the 49 levels obeying, then our mind will remain quiet and silent. The outcome will be that the essence will become free from the intellect in order to experience that element that radically transforms the new, the reality. Thus, through that way then, we will gradually come out victorious from the spiritual night. Therefore, I repeat, it is not a matter of making the mind blank, because that is completely absurd, but to achieve the stillness and silence of the mind, which is different. And if despite all these practices the mind does not want to be still and silent, we must then recriminate it, scold it, make it to see its error, even to punish it thus. In the end, it will not have no choice but to be defeated and become still and silent. Thus, we will enter into ecstasy, samadhi. The essence will be released from the intellect and experience reality. So this is how we will truly leave the spiritual night. Student, many students do not want to seek spiritual revolution in groups. They are not interested in attending the lumicials or chains. They seek, rather, their revolution in a particular manner, what is more convenient and productive. Samael Aun Weor. Self-realization is something extremely individual for each one. But we must consider the three necessary factors for the revolution of consciousness. To be born, this is only possible by working in the forge of the Cyclops. To die, this is a matter of dissolving the psychological I. Sacrifice for humanity is love. We must somehow fight for our fellow men. In the sanctuaries, for example, the Gnostic sanctuaries, there is the opportunity for sacrifice. By being part of a healing chain, prayer, to help or to heal others from a distance, we are providing an impersonal service. By the very fact of attending the sanctuary, we are helping others with our forces, because in each sanctuary, a special magnetic center is formed. It is clear that such a center is vital for the consciousness, because in that center we can practice meditation. In that center we can stimulate our essence. Therefore, these centers are cardinal and definitive for the new age of Aquarius. Thus, it is always convenient to attend the lumicials, not so much for ourselves, but for others. That is all. Tund. Master, many of your critics called attention to the fact that books like The Revolution of Beelzebub and others are filled with diatribes, severe criticisms, and claims against certain authors. They see a contradiction between your former attitude and the doctrine of the heart that you speak of in many of your books. Why did you use such diatribes? And why you do not do it anymore? Samael Aun Weor. The farmer that is going to sow must first burn the stubble, thistles, thorns, and all that which is useless, in order to afford the luxury of planting the grain where life will sprout. The workers who are going to build a house must first break the soil, dig the hard ground, in order to establish firm foundations to build it. Likewise, myself, who had to deliver the message for the new age of Aquarius, I had the tough task of any farmer or laborer. I had to point out, indicate the obstacles, show the dangers, errors, before sowing the grain of the culture of the new age, which in these moments begins in the august thunder of thought. Student, there are many stimulant plants like marijuana, which, for example, serve in order to achieve astral projection in a quick manner. Samael Aun Weor. The chemical elements of drugs are harmful. Note that marijuana, like many other drugs, is 100% subjective. It is true that by means of hallucinogenic mushrooms, LSD, lysergic acid, etc., astral projections are achieved indeed, but they are subjective and inhuman kinds of projections. They are processed in the infradimensions of nature and the cosmos, and are not conducive to authentic, transcendental, objective enlightenment. They fail. They are a detriment. Student, you as well as the master Huiracocha once spoke about peyote, precisely as help for these cases of astral projection. Samael Aun Weor. Peyote is quite different. The elemental of peyote cooperates, yes, with meditation. It does not create any kind of tendencies. Yet the elemental is very demanding. It demands chastity. In no way will peyote help, for instance, the indecent, lustful one. It has rules. Master Huiracocha talked about peyote. He narrated how the Master Rasinchi inside the temple of Chapultepec used peyote in order to cause an astral projection. This is the only recommended plant with the condition of not abusing of it, since this is only for the KH, cosmic human. A student who wanted to use it for the third time after receiving several instructions was called to order by the lords of karma and was prohibited from continuing with it. To be more precise, he was abusing it. Therefore, peyote's elemental is useful, but one needs to know the proper procedures and do not ever abuse it. As for other drugs, I will not say anything. We cannot consider peyote as a drug. It is a harmless plant that does not create any kind of habit. and that only cooperates with meditation when one knows how to meditate. Someone could ingest much peyote and will not have any results. Another could chew a little bit of it, a few grams, and get an extraordinary result. The secret is to know how to meditate. The elemental cooperates with the one who knows how to meditate. The elemental really helps, but since it is illegal in some countries, of course we cannot in any way recommend it. We do not recommend the use of this marvelous cactus. Indeed, what we recommend is practice, much practice, and soon you will act and travel within the astral body. Samael Aun Weor, Aztec Christic Magic. Peyote is not found in the countries of South America or Central America. It is only found in Mexico, and with difficulty. Student, master, the ladies always wonder why they are relegated by some to an inferior level. Consequently, they want to know what their accomplishments could be. That is, what they could get if they work on themselves with the three factors of the revolution of consciousness. Samael Aun Weor. I do not know why some want women to be relegated to an inferior level. The harsh reality of the facts is that women have the same rights as men. That is obvious. Like any man, women also have to create their existential superior bodies of the being. Like any man, they must incarnate their human soul. Like any man, they have to betroth their buddhi, to marry their beloved one. So, I do not know why some want to relegate women to an inferior level. The harsh reality of the facts is that women, those who are women in the physical plane, are men in the astral plane, and vice versa. Men here in this physical plane are men, but whether they like it or not. In the astral world, they are women. So, why do men in this physical world want to relegate women to an inferior level? Student, master, is the key of Solomon used only to evoke dismal entities? Or can it also be used in order to invoke divine entities? Samael Aun Weor. With the key of Solomon, one can invoke the angels, the holy gods. In the Middle Ages, the clavicles were used in order to invoke the dogs. Sure, it takes a lot of courage to make a kind of invocation of this class. The invocations are very dangerous, because if the individual does not yet have the structure of an adept, of a magician, and performs an invocation like this, it may occur what happened to a good friend. He died 3 days later. Thus, it is not irrelevant in these moments to recall what happened in Costa Rica, the case of that prostitute who lived in an inebriated state from bar to bar. And even if to repeat her words becomes a bit grotesque, for the good of the great cause, I will keep on repeating them. She said, and please excuse me the expression, I do many every day, 14, 15 men, 20. And she further said, and if the devil appeared to me in person, I am refining the words. I'm not uttering them completely as they are too vulgar, I will do him also. Well, they say, and it is known by everyone in that village in Costa Rica that one day, among others, apparently a sailor came to visit that woman. The sailor, of course, also wallowed with her. After the woman had performed the sexual act with the sailor in question, she sat at the doorway of her horrible apartment. There she sat, while gazing the landscape, the panorama of people coming and going, etc., etc. Suddenly she felt that someone called her from within the bedroom. It was the sailor. He said to her, "You do not know me. You think that you know me because you slept with me, but you are wrong. You do not know me. Turn around and look at me so that you can get to know me." Thus she looked towards her bedroom. So, what did she see? She saw Lucifer transformed into a true devil, terrible, as mythology paints him out there, with all of the horrors from some dark cave. The woman fell instantly unconscious. 3 days later, she died in the hospital. Those who saw her say that the smell of sulfur came out of that apartment. Thus, for some time, people did not want to go down that street. Of course, before dying, she told her story. She managed to tell someone. She did not resist and died. What happened? Well, her own Lucifer, who was so horrendous, it is clear that he intervened for her sake. Possibly, I say, possibly. But obviously, he was sent by the Ancient of Days, by her own father, who is in secret. Thus, he acted, and was physically materialized. Of course, the lesson for that woman was terrible. She disincarnated. We can be sure that when that woman returns to take a new body, she will never fall again into prostitution. It is even possible that she will follow the path of chastity, since the lesson she received was very bitter. That is, it is clear that her father, who is in secret, decided to perform a surgical operation. Yes, Grace utilized that part of the being called Lucifer, and it is even possible for that woman to later take the path. Student, then, Venerable One, what should we do in order to whiten our Lucifer? Samael Aun Weor. Destroy the ego, reduce it to cosmic dust. It is necessary to dress him in white. Moreover, it is necessary to dress him with the purple of the kings. We must feel pity for our own Lucifer. Student, does he grant us something? Samael Aun Weor. He grants the sexual impulse to everyone. You have to take advantage of that impulse, the whole of it, by thrusting the spear into his side. Remember that Lucifer is a ladder to descend. And remember that Lucifer is a ladder to ascend. Read the Divine Comedy, and you will find ample illustration of Lucifer in the ninth sphere. Student, Master, how is it that you say that Krishnamurti has no ego, when in fact, before attaining resurrection, the Master has to work in the infernos of the different planets, disintegrating, we might say, the germs of the egos. And after the second mountain, the Master has to continue performing more tasks for his perfection? Samael Aun Weor. Yes, Krishnamurti. Mr. Krishnamurti is a very old soul, but really, despite that he, we might say, has no ego, he has not attained resurrection. Obviously, he must descend to the ninth sphere in order to work. Clearly, he has to eliminate something that he does not know. Yet, if we state that he has no ego, that he is clean of egos, this is so, in what is humanly understandable. Beyond, there are still some elements that escape, we might say, everyone's comprehension, and that we must also disintegrate. Student, Venerable Master, regarding Genesis and a question that was asked earlier, it is stated that after the separation of the sexes, not all humans fell. And those great masters who did not fall continue their path. Therefore, necessarily, did all of those masters from the past Mahamanvantara have to descend? Or does the fall always occur anyhow? Samael Aun Weor. Well, this is how it is described in Genesis, so it is in the revolt of the angels. But we must distinguish between a fall and a descent. Many are those who confuse a fall with a descent, since in both cases the initiate or initiates go to the ninth Dantesque circle in order to work with the fire and the water, origin of worlds, beasts, humans, and gods. Therefore, this provides, we might say, many interpretations. But we must not ever confuse a fall with a descent. They are different, and are always given in any Genesis, all of these descents and falls. Student, the Archangel Sakaki's error occurs, so to speak, on all planets. Samael Aun Weor. Well, Sakaki's error does not occur in all cases. Archangel Sakaki committed a mistake here in this solar system, specifically on this planet Earth. Thus, Sakaki's case is period new paragraph. Student, Master, now referring not to Sakaki, I wonder, are there also others like him who were mistaken? Does the fall always occur on other planets? Samael Aun Weor. In every newborn universe, there are falls and descents. The Elohim must descend, yet sometimes they fall. But in any case, we always need to descend in order to later ascend victorious. Meaning every ascent is preceded by a descent. Every exaltation is preceded by a frightful and terrible humiliation. If not, where would the merit be? Student, what is Elohim and what is Elohim? Samael Aun Weor. Elohim is Elohim and Elohim is Elohim. Elohim is the cosmic common eternal Father, the infinitude that sustains all, the all-merciful, the ineffable absolute. And Elohim is the second unit, the manifested unit, the host of Elohim creators, the host of the androgynous who created the universe, etc. That is the army of the word, the army of the voice, the logos. Undoubtedly, the Elohim who immerses himself in the bosom of the eternal cosmic Father into the absolute receives the true title, which is Paramartha Satya. A Paramartha Satya is something ineffable, something impossible to comprehend at a simple glance. A Paramartha Satya is beyond good and evil, beyond the personality, individuality, and self. A Paramartha Satya is crystal clear, terribly divine. Few are the Elohim who manage to become Paramartha Satyas. Student, master, again regarding Lucifer. One has to bleach Lucifer to turn him brilliant, right? So then he himself has to cooperate, so that together one can turn him into that exalted Lucifer? Samael Aun Weor. Lucifer collaborates with temptation. Otherwise, how else could he collaborate? Temptation is fire, and the triumph over temptation is light. If one overcomes temptation, then one defeats Lucifer. When one overcomes Lucifer, then on the same body of Lucifer, on his back, one triumphs and ascends. Remember that in the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri, Virgil descends through the ribs of the Lord Lucifer and ascends through the same ribs of the Lord Lucifer. Lucifer is a ladder to descend. Lucifer is a ladder to ascend. If we overcome temptation, we ascend on the very back of Lucifer. Lucifer places us under temptation so that we can ascend. Behold how Christ disguised himself as Lucifer. How grandiose is Christus Lucifer. How grandiose he is. Putting the ladder so that we can go up. Student, I want to ask, Master, why do you say that in the causal world there are souls who live there, but nevertheless they do not have the causal body? Could you please explain that to us? Samael Aun Weor. Yes, they are souls who have not yet done the great work and who live in the causal world. Since they have not done the great work, therefore they do not have the bodies. This is why at the dawn, at the aurora of any Mahamanvantara, arise the self-generators, the self-generated and the generated. The self-generators are those who are already capable of generating themselves, since they created their bodies. That is, the self-generated who already generated themselves. And the not generated also arise, who are those who have not created their bodies. That is, those who have bodies, and those who do not arise from the great invisible at the dawn of any creation. To create the bodies is indispensable. If you did not create them yet, then you can create them because they must be created. In order to create them, you must do the great work. In the causal world, we find millions of souls who have not yet created their bodies, who have not done yet the great work. They are known to the naked eye. The causal human knows them, and these souls are very obedient. They obey the causal human, but they have not yet done the great work. They wait, in order to do it in the future. Student, what can you tell us about the habit of Haitians who mourn the child at birth and have a party when someone dies? Is there anything transcendental about these things? Samael Aun Weor. Well, it has a bit of comprehension. Indeed, death is not something to cry about. The process of dying is as natural as birth. For them, it is harder to be born than to die. At birth, one comes to this world to suffer. And when we die, one leaves this cloister of bitterness. This is why they have parties when one departs. That is so. This habit for them is a form of comprehension. Student, Master, to what extent could we accept the prophecies of Nostradamus? To what extent would you accept them? Samael Aun Weor. Nostradamus was never wrong, but bear in mind certain dates given for the future. One must know how to understand the calculations that he used. However, many prophecies of Nostradamus have proven accurate, wonderful. They have been mathematically fulfilled. It is worth studying them, but he is difficult to interpret. One needs to have the donum dei so that he can be interpreted. All the work of the centuries is in verse, and those verses lead many into error because these are verses written in ancient French, and allegorical, symbolic people can give them the most diverse interpretations. Student, someone once said that you were Nostradamus, that he was one of your reincarnations, a body that you had. Samael Aun Weor. No, absolutely not. I never had that kind of reincarnation. Nostradamus is a separate individual, a great astrologer, a great seer. Many of his prophecies have already been fulfilled accurately and have everyone thinking on his prophecies because they have been fulfilled and continue to be fulfilled. He is the only astrologer no one has been able to laugh about. People are accustomed to laugh at the astrologers, at the prophets, the seers, etc., but they could not laugh at Nostradamus because he has cost them dearly. It happens that all of his prophecies have been fulfilled. He has not failed any. Student, what type of prophecies did Nostradamus make? Samael Aun Weor. Well, he prophesied even his own death, between his bench and desk, and yes, that is where they found him dead. His body was buried in a cathedral in France. The intriguing aspect of this matter is that some time later, a group of people went to uncover the tomb of Nostradamus, and there they found his body, intact, along with a curse in writing that said, "The one who desecrate my grave will die. Thus you will die." Those who had opened the grave read the curse and left laughing about the nonsense they just had done. Nonetheless, that day, all of them perished in an accident. So, Nostradamus always has been a problem and remains a problem. Everyone laughed at the astrologers, the seers, and the prophets, but no one has been able to laugh about Mr. Nostradamus. Their laughter has cost them very much. Student, is Nostradamus a resurrected master? Samael Aun Weor. Well, according to what I know, Nostradamus did not attain resurrection, but there is no doubt that he was a great astrologer, a great seer since his prophecies have been fulfilled. He specialized in that, in prophecies, in astrology. He described his world in the centuries. They say that he spent the entire night before one of those saucepans of copper filled with water. There, on the water, he concentrated his sight, and since he was a seer, then in that water he could see future events. To that end, he prophesied with absolute confidence. He gave dates and names in an extraordinary manner. The book, The Centuries, continues standing. It is a book for today. One day I saw a film about the end of the world that commented about the end under the light of Nostradamus. It is a good movie, except that the end does not coincide. The end of that movie is absurd. Let me tell you in between parentheses that in the end the Earth appeared completely sterilized by atomic bombs, and a few dummies out there, walking around, crawling like snakes or monsters. Well, that end is absurd because the reality is that it will be different. The reality is that with the arrival of Hercolubus, the revolution of the axis of the Earth will occur. This revolution of the axis was announced by Nostradamus himself. He said that the Earth will seem as if it comes out of orbit. Thus it will be as stated by Nostradamus. Then the seas will change their beds, because the equator will become the poles, and the poles, the equator. Then, by the changing bed of the oceans, the current lands shall be sunk to the bottom of the seas. Student, the date given, the year 2000, is therefore wrong. Samael Aun Weor. Well, many dates are given, But the harsh reality of the facts is that Nostradamus in particular said, the year 1999 and 7 months, from the sky will come a great king of terror to bring back to life the great king of Angol Moas, before after Mars, to reign by good fortune. So, the final cataclysm will occur in the year 1999 and 7 months. Nostradamus sets the 1999 with the arrival of a great king of terror, which is nothing else than Hercolibus. The end of time will be preceded by a solar eclipse more dark and gloomy than any since the creation of the world, except that after the death and passion of Jesus Christ. And it will be in the month of October that the great translation will be made. And it will be such that one will think the gravity of the earth has lost its natural movement, and that it is to be plunged into the abyss of perpetual darkness. Student, what are the strict requirements in order to be part of the sixth root race, the Koradi, Samael Aun Weor? In order to be part of the future nucleus of the sixth root race, as the first point of view, one needs to have annihilated the ego, because in the sixth root race, the physical body will not be given to someone with ego. Any person with ego cannot enter the sixth root race. Student, if a person is working on herself and her work is not yet finished, what is next for her? Samael Aun Weor, the abyss and the second death. That is, in order to enter into the sixth root race, it is clear that if she still has the ego, a physical body cannot be given to her. Student, what I mean is, if that person is working and has a high initiatic level, yet she still has subjective entities. Samael Aun Weor. Well, if the initiate has subjective entities, even if she has a high initiatic degree, a physical body will not be given to her if she has ego, because she would harm others. She would end up ruining the golden age. Student, even if she is working with the three factors, Samael Aun Weor. With these conditions, no one can receive a physical body in the sixth root race. It could happen that such a candidate will be taken into another planet in space. But regarding the planet Earth in the Golden Age, those who have ego cannot have a physical body. Only one person with ego will rot all the others, will cause harm to the others. Thus, the Golden Age would fail because one person. That would not be fair either, to fail an entire age for the whim of one master, or the whim of one person. That is not fair. Since the earth has suffered much from this race, it is just to give it some rest. The earth suffers. She needs a little break to dance. What would one do with mastery, the one who has worked yet has not dissolved the whole ego? Samael Aun Weor. That one might find favorable development on other planets in space. Student, and can return then to the planet Earth. Samael Aun Weor. Yes, once devoid of ego, one can return to the earth. Student, can those who have dissolved the 50% of the ego go to the promised land? Samael Aun Weor. Those who have dissolved the ego, or part of the ego, may end up dissolving the rest of it on the island where those from the new Exodus will be taken. There will be a select group from humanity that will be brought secretly to a place in the Pacific. Thus, there, those selected people will dissolve the ego, if still they have not dissolved it, so that when the double rainbow and the emergence of new lands appear, such persons, or the sum of persons, can enter, we might say, into the new lands. Student, those who have deserved to participate in the new Exodus, can they travel in spaceships like those that our Tibetan siblings have? Samael Aun Weor. Yes, that is intended. Many will be brought in those very cosmic ships to that island. It is also true that there are some of our people, Earthlings, living on Ganymede, that is a satellite of Jupiter, or living on other planets like Mars, Venus, Jupiter, etc. They are Earthlings who have disappeared, who have been sought and not found. They have been taken. They have been crossed, or they have crossed, or will cross, with people from other planets where they have been taken. The outcome of these crossings is essential. When the time of the Golden Age arrives, The result of these crossings will be brought back to Earth. The result of these crossings will cross in their turn with the fundamental nucleus, and from there will emerge an entirely new race. Student, master, from my side, one last question. I will state my case. It happens that since childhood, my parents have given me clothing, footwear, medicines, education, and all that. And it so happens that I found Gnosis. I have not been able to pay them or reward them for the favors that they have done for me. Now I do not know what to do, whether to return there or to continue the mission. What should I do? Samael Aun Weor. Well, the harsh reality of your question is already answered by the great Kabir Jesus as follows. And another of his disciples said unto him, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. But Jesus said unto him, Follow me, and let the dead bury their dead. Matthew 8:21, 22. And whosoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Luke 14:27. So, we have no other choice but to follow the intimate Christ, right? That is the truth. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Genesis 19:23-26. And the great Kabir Jesus warns us about the end of times, saying, Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Matthew 24:17-18. In a word, Jesus says, let he who is walking not go back. He warns us about the necessity of marching towards where we need to march. All of this might seem a little cruel, but certainly this is how the path of the Superman is. So therefore, this is how it is, student. So, in this moment, I am not committing an error. Samael Aun Weor. Well, you are. At this moment, following the intimate Christ, and therefore you are not making any mistake because you are following the path of the intimate Christ. That is obvious. And therefore, one must not retreat. Student, master, what is the name of the new race? Samael Aun Weor. Well, in the universal white fraternity, it is called the Koradi race. As the name of the present race is the Aryan race, the future race is the Koradi. Student, is there any esoteric reason why it is called Koradi? Samael Aun Weor. Well, there may be, but I have not thought to ask yet. I only know that this is how they call it, but I have not figured out. As all of them named it Koradi, likewise I also call it so, but I have not figured out why. Quant, how it could be proved that the moon is older than the earth. Samael Aun Weor. That is a scientific matter, my dear brother, which has been already proven. In this day and age, science has very fine devices with which time can be measured. Thus, the stones brought by the astronauts have already been properly measured, and it has been proven over and over again that the moon is older than the earth. Scientists state that the moon comes from very remote times, perhaps from the very origins of the cosmos. We go even further, my dear brother. We know very well by direct esoteric experience that the moon is the mother of the earth. The moon comes from the past Mahamanvantara named Padma, or Golden Lotus. The moon was a rich world. It had immense seas filled with water, volcanoes in constant eruption, rich plant life, all species of animals, flowering vegetation, powerful human civilizations, etc. But as it is known, it is clear that everything is born, grows, ages, and dies. So today the moon is a corpse. It is already dead. That is all. Durant. Master, why it is stated that the pyramids of Mexico, the pyramids at Teotihuacan, are older than those of Egypt. Samael Aun Weor. The pyramids of Teotihuacan, my dear brother, were built by the Atlanteans, and not by the Aztecs, as many suppose. Undoubtedly, those pyramids are older than those of Egypt. There are chronologies regarding it. In any case, I want to tell you something important. I remember my previous lives with exactitude. I lived in Atlantis, and it is not irrelevant to state that we did incessant pilgrimages. Sometimes such pilgrimages were to Egypt, sometimes they were to Teotihuacan. Thus, based on such experiences, I can affirm, then, that the pyramids of Egypt were built after those of Teotihuacan, that is, the pyramids of Mexico are older than those of Egypt. There are religious chronologies that affirm this, likewise by those who, like me, have direct esoteric experiences, by we who remember our past lives. So, those who lived in ancient Atlantis know that this is how it is. Student, someone told us in a public lecture that the reason why in the Gnostic movement is stated that Gnosis is engaged in controlling reproduction is because in heaven, that is, in the higher worlds, the number of incarnating souls is already completed. How can we explain this? Samael Aun Weor. Much has been said about the matter of birth control, my dear brother. All scientists are concerned about that. Undoubtedly, mankind has high and low tides. Times, we might say, of demographic plus and times of minus. There is an ebb and flow in all that exists, an incessant rhythm. So, at this moment, there is, we might say, demographic explosion, a human high tide. It is obvious to comprehend that this high tide, will be followed by a decline, a minus. So the day is not far away in which terrible wars and cataclysms will produce the descent, the minus, the low tide, the reduction of the human population. But since scientists do not know anything about this, they do not understand this ebb and flow of humanity. They know nothing about the laws of the pendulum, rhythm, etc. They worry too much and try to control birth with artificial methods. Birth control pills and countless systems that cause cancer and many other diseases, very grievous for the human species. We, the Gnostics, have simple, practical methods. We know how to control this issue, not of birth, because that would be criminal, but of fertilization. Birth control is a crime. Control of fertilization is a duty, and fecundation can be controlled. For that, we have the Sahaja Maithuna, sex yoga. The key is simple and straightforward, and it is known by all our brothers and sisters. It consists in the connection of the lingam yoni without the ejaculation of the ens seminis. Because, as Paracelsus said, within the ens seminis is found the whole ens virtutis of the fire. I do not want to tell you that through the Sahaja Maithuna, human reproduction is eliminated. It is obvious that while there is sexual contact, it is clear that there is fertility, but the number of births can be reduced with it. And if that is what we want, nothing is better than the Sahaja Maithuna, sex yoga, that is all. Student, master, some people ask us if it is not dangerous to hold the sexual energy in the sacrum. Samael Aun Weor. What is that about holding the energy, brother? Let us talk at this time of the sperm or ens seminis. Let us be clear in our questions and our answers. Have you seen, my dear brother, how the puddles on the roads dry up under sunlight? Their waters evaporate and become clouds and lightning and thunder. Well, that is what we need to do in our organisms. With the Maithuna, with the heat, with the creative fire of sex, the seminal waters, the spermatic liquor that lies in our sexual endocrine glands, is transmuted into what we call vapor or humors, clinically speaking. Finally, these vapors become positive, negative energies. Those energies rise through the sympathetic canals called Ida and Pingala in the east. These channels start from the very sexual glands to the brain, and that is already proven. Certainly they are not completely physical, we might say. Rather that they are semi-physical, semi-ethereal, but they exist. They are marvelously entwined along the spine, forming the Holy Eight, until reaching precisely the brain. Thus, what goes up, my dear brother, is not semen, because if semen would go up to the brain, the entire world would become crazy. Therefore, we are not holding semen, we are transmuting it, which is something completely different. We are transforming semen into energy, and that is not a crime. This is how we cerebrate the semen. This is how we inseminate the brain. The matter is transformed into energy, my dear brother. This was stated by Einstein. So why argue? If we manage to transmute the seminal matter into energy, if we can make that creative energy rise to the brain, that is not a crime. This is how the brain is fortified and the pineal gland develops. How can it be a crime to revitalize ourselves with the sexual energy? Why? What is the reason? What happens is one thing, my dear brother. All those fornicators, those who enjoy sexual pleasure, those who feel joy when spilling the ENS seminize, want to justify their fornication, their lasciviousness. That is all. Student, master, who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil? Samael Aun Weor. That question is very intriguing, my dear brother. In any case, I want to answer with the following. Jesus said, and he clearly stated to all the Pharisees and all the Sadducees and those crowds who heard him, if God were your Father, ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Even because ye cannot hear my word. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. John 8:42, 44. It is clear that when people feel lust, then they breed and reproduce. How are they going to say then that their children are born of the Holy Spirit of divinity? Now, didn't we descend from the original sin? Isn't it stated that Adam and Eve fornicated? Isn't it stated that they disobeyed the Eternal One? Then, would we who are children of Adam and Eve be children of God? It is obvious that we are children of the original sin, that is, of the devil. Or do you believe, perhaps, that God is able to commit the original sin? Now, if God is not capable of committing the original sin, who then can commit it? It stands by all means that the one who commits it is the devil. That which happened there in the Edenic paradisiacal times between Adam and Eve is repeated at every moment, my dear brother. Man and woman are sexually united because of lust, and this is how they reproduce their species. This is how their children who are of the devil are born, because God is not lewd or lascivious. He has no lust. Why then impute to God? The children who are of the devil, we are all children of the devil. Thus, whoever wants to become a child of God has to earn it. That one has to eliminate the I, reduce it to powder, and fabricate the solar bodies in the forge of the Cyclops. They must also sacrifice themselves for humanity. Only then, my dear brothers and sisters, only then can we become children of God. And there is no other way. There is no other formula. It is logical that all human beings, without exception, are children of the devil, as stated to us by our Lord Christ. Jesus is not a liar. He never lied. He spoke the truth. So we must march firmly to tell the truth, to tell that which is and nothing more than what it is, no matter what the cost might be. Student, what should we do in order to awaken the consciousness? And what percentage of awakened consciousness does humanity have now? Samael Aun Weor. Humanity has only 3% of the consciousness awakened and 97% sleeping. So the situation is grave. Do you understand me? All people want to see, hear, touch, and feel the great realities of the higher worlds. People want to remember their past lives, etc., and talk to the gods. But unfortunately, as I said, people have only 3% of the consciousness awakened and 97% sleeping. those who want to touch the great realities of the inner worlds. Whosoever wants to attain the awakening of their consciousness must resolve to die from moment to moment. This is indispensable, no matter what the cost might be. First of all, it is urgent to know that we have a pluralized I within us. That I is Seth from Egyptian mythology, a conjunction of red devils, as stated by the priests of the ancient land of the pharaohs. These submerged entities that come to personify the ego, or Seth, as we're stating, are the semblance of our own defects. Our consciousness is bottled up, stuffed, flasked, asleep within each of these entities. So our consciousness, we might say, acts according to its conditioning. It definitely marches on the path of error. It is egoic, unfortunately. If we want to awaken in order to see, hear, touch, and feel the superior worlds, in order to chat with the masters of the White Brotherhood, then we need to totally destroy Seth, the ego, the red devils, the eyes. Only in that way can our consciousness be emancipated, freed, and radically awakened. When the consciousness awakens, then we can see the path. When the consciousness awakens, we can be in touch with the divine humanity who lives in the Jinn lands. When the consciousness awakens, we can remember our past lives. We can visit other inhabited worlds. We can then chat face to face with the gods of the Mahamanvantara, etc. Only thus, being truly awakened, can we have direct knowledge. As long as one does not have direct knowledge, my dear brothers and sisters, one is nothing more than a theorist, repeating like a parrot what others say, and that's all. We need to have consciousness of what we study. We need to drink from the direct font of hidden wisdom. I, for example, can teach you, and I am teaching what I know, what I experienced, what I have lived, not only in this incarnation, but in my past existences. And even more, I can speak to you in a frank and sincere manner about events of past Mahamanvantaras, because I was active in other Mahamanvantaras. Therefore, I can give testimony of what I know, of what I saw, of what I heard, and that is not a crime. But indeed, I tell you, and let us talk frankly, in order to awaken the consciousness one needs to have terrific esoteric discipline. Trent, Master, what do I do in order to dissolve the I? Samael Aun Weor. Well, you want to dissolve the ego? I congratulate you, my dear brother. You want to dissolve the ego, right? It is interesting. I find it interesting that you want to dissolve the ego. Only then can you get to be awakened, my esteemed brother. Sure, but not only do you need to know how to comprehend every error, one must also to know how to eliminate it. Krishnamurti speaks to us, for example, about comprehension. Okay. One needs to comprehend each error. Let us say, for example, that you want to eliminate the I of anger. Well, you have to comprehend that I, and for that you must use meditation, reflection, in order to know its most subtle mechanisms. Because often, one gets angry for one reason or another. Sometimes because someone touches one's self-esteem, or jealousy, or emotional frustration, or a reaction to a hurtful word that has so many facets. But once you comprehended the secret spring of an explosion of anger at any given moment, one must to appeal to a higher power, my dear brother. That higher power is within yourself. It is the igneous serpent of our magical powers, enclosed, as the Hindus say, in the Muladhara chakra situated in the coccyx. I am emphatically addressing Devi Kundalini, the igneous serpent of our magical powers. To her, yes, to her you must appeal. One must ask, beg, beseech her to eliminate the I of anger that you thoroughly comprehended, that you studied through meditation and profound reflection. The procedure is the same for any I. It is not enough to comprehend, for example, the secret motive of an attack of jealousy or the origin of hatred. one needs to go further, to appeal, whether we like it or not, but this is how it is, to a higher power. Since one cannot do anything just by oneself. The mind is not capable of eliminating defects. The mind can change them from one department to another. The mind can label them with different names, etc., but the mind cannot disintegrate them. The mind cannot reduce them to dust. If we want to reduce this or that defect to dust, a defect personified by this or that I, then besides comprehension, we need elimination, and for this we must appeal to Devi Kundalini. I repeat, Devi Kundalini, the igneous serpent of our magical powers, the bronze serpent that healed the Israelites in the wilderness. Understood? Student. Venerable Master, I insist again about awakening. Why is it that the lords of the left hand do not practice any of the three factors, however they hear and see and are awake in the superior worlds? Samael Aun Weor. I will gladly answer your question, my esteemed brother, since your question is quite intriguing and I naturally have to answer it. Clearly, you demand an answer from me, and my duty is to give it. I want to tell you something very interesting. Listen to me. A few days ago, I happened to summon, in the higher worlds, the angel Adonai, the son of light and joy, the master of Count Zanoni, so wisely described by Bulwer Lytton in his novel Zanoni. Clearly, that angel attended my call. Thus, delightfully, we sat down to talk. The angel told me something very interesting. He cited a specific philosopher who at one time was with us in the Gnostic movement, and who is now a denigrator of the great cause. The angel said that gentleman has awakened in evil and for evil. Days later, I confirmed or verified the claims of the angel Adonai, the son of light and joy. Certainly, I found the cited gentleman in the internal worlds. That man was completely awakened, but in evil and for evil. When in my esoteric studies I have had to visit the Black Moon, for example, there I found all of those red devils that the Book of the Dead of the ancient Egyptians speaks about. They are fully awakened. And when we enter into the infernal worlds, in those 9 Dantesque circles described by Dante in his Divine Comedy, and located in the heart of the earth, we find all those people of darkness, fully awakened indeed, but in evil and for evil. This is because through technical and scientific procedures, one can also awaken in evil and for evil. The red devils, for example, know very well what awaits them. They are aware that they will devolve over time in the underground world, through the 9 circles of Dante. One day they will be disintegrated, reduced to cosmic dust in the heart of the earth. They do not ignore that their essence will escape from their ego, when the ego is dead in the heart of the earth. And they like it. Thus, when they are warned, they do not show any remorse. By means of the second death, they know that their essence, someday, after escaping from the heart of the earth, will enter a new development on the surface. And in the sunlight, they know that their soul will become a playful gnome in the rocks, later a plant, then animal, and finally will re-enter the human condition in some epoch, in some eternity. They do not ignore it. They do not ignore that when one comes to this physical world, one is given 108 existences. I can say that every human being is entitled to 108 existences on the stage of life, and that when these 108 existences are fulfilled, if one is not self-realized, then one descends to the infernal worlds, returns in time, is reduced to powder in order to restart a new cycle, a new journey inward and upward. This they do not ignore because they are awake, yet in evil and for evil. So the important thing is to awaken in the light, and this is possible by means of the techniques, by means of sanctity, by dissolving the ego, by reducing it to cosmic dust, no matter what the cost might be.